I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
So guys, John P. Claymore here, and as subscriber request in the comment section, I finally made the follow-up to my previous videos on Karlyn Borysenko. Now, really quick before we get into this, guys, I titled this video, The Two Faces of Karlyn Borysenko and What She Basically Does Not Get. Now, you see, I have a fundamental disagreement with Karlyn Borysenko about critical race theory not being anti-white. Of course, it is very anti-white. It is racist as a whole. I did include some comments, and I did include some actual clips in this video, several to be exact, mostly from I guess it was an episode that she did the other day. She posted to YouTube. I went ahead and just kind of looked through 2 or 3 more, and try to find the ones that are most prominent to kind of show what I mean. You see, I call it two faces because there's actually a good deal of contradictions in these clips. I mean, if you actually look at them, and I'll explain them as we get further into this. But really quick before we get into this, make sure you guys hit the like button, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share this video, also hit the notification bell. Please sign up in the comment section. And let's try to make this channel grow. I'd like to get 300 subscribers for the end of the month. I need you guys' help to do so. So let's take a look at this. So when Karlyn Borysenko says that critical race theory is not anti-white, you see, there's different ways of looking at white. You see, it's not so much the fact that it's anti-white skin. It's also racist against black people too. But I think Karlyn Borysenko, because she's still very, very much a lefty, and I understand that, well, she didn't really leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left her, all right? And I'll explain that further in the video, what I mean by that. But you see, when she says it's not anti-white, she's kind of missing the point. You see, I didn't expand upon this in the first video, which, by the way, I'll leave the previous takes. And there's another video about Ubersoy, who also has a very, very good argument of why Karlyn Borysenko is wrong, and we'll leave it in the comment section. He just hits it from a much, much different point of view, much, much more technical. I hit it from a much, much more common point of view, much more raw. And you see, the thing that I want to try to relay over to this is that it is very, very much anti-white, and here's the reason why. You see, at this moment in time, the left in this country, and see, like I said, please send her back. I want her to go back and see exactly what it is they're doing over there to make sure she really and truly left them, because I don't think she understands. That's why I'm saying she needed to go back and see. You see what I'm saying? You need to go back and see exactly what it is you claim to be leaving and see if you've really and truly changed. I think she wants to change, and I think she's trying to, but she's still got a lot of lefty in her. But what I mean by anti-white is this here. You see, the left in this country has branded anything in this country that is successful as white. They're very, very anti-capitalistic. You see, the basic fundamentals of capitalism is that you work, you try to earn. And I understand that some communities, some people in certain situations can't be as successful. But let's say that you're an African-American male who lives in a white suburb, or if you're an African-American male who lives in a suburb, or you're Hispanic who lives in a suburb or a nice house, guess what they do? They call you privileged. Don't you guys remember when the defund the police movement went on last year, when they went to Minneapolis and they asked that girl, who am I going to call if something goes wrong? And she says that comes from a place of privilege. By the way, it was a white girl who said that. You see, they automatically associate privilege and white together, even if you're not white. You see what I'm saying? Remember, they were attacking Tim Scott for saying that America was not a racist country, because in their eyes, anything that is pro-America is deemed white. So technically, therefore, it is anti-white, anti-white people, anti-white skin, anti-anything that resembles any form of privilege. Do you see what I'm saying? Also, something else, too, is that there's this massive separation in the country. People are trying to separate themselves. And as we saw Black Lives Matter, we kind of saw that, too. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you one more clip. Now, really quick, before we really get into this, I want you to understand that when you look at critical race theory, I encourage people to read the books on critical race theory. I haven't read the full books, but I've read just enough to kind of understand. Some people, you know, and I've seen several documentaries on this. Now, I bring this up because the Ubersoy video is in the comment section, and Derek Bell is one of the people who is mentioned the most. Derek Bell, of course, you may remember, actually taught former President Barack Obama. You don't believe me? Here you go.
Horizons and change the standards of what legal writing is about. Open up your hearts and your minds to the words of Professor Derek Bell.
As I forgot to ask you, please stick around for the full video, because this one could be about 15 to 16 minutes. I wrote down talking points and studied them, but I didn't have a script. But without that, let's keep going. So as you can see, Derek Bell, he was somebody who originally actually wanted to influence critical race theory. You will see that in the Ubersoy video that I'll leave in the comment section. Okay, Robin DiAngelo. Okay, she wrote the whole white fragility. Now, if you're in a crowd full of people, and by the way, she mentions this in the book, she was in a crowd in a room at a party, and she got very, very uncomfortable around people. That is not the other people that are uncomfortable. That means that you are the one who's got the problem. Do you see what I'm saying? Also, Ibram X. Kennedy's book, which, by the way, if you actually read the first few chapters of it, it sounds damn near unintelligible, and I can't believe this guy even got through college. But to suggest that, I don't know, that critical race theory is not anti-white, let me go ahead and give you one more example.
You talk about critical race theory, which is pretty much going to be teaching kids how to hate each other, how to dislike each other. That's pretty much, I don't care what you say, it's pretty much what it's going to all come down to. 2 medical degrees. No mom, no dad in the house. Worked my way through college. Sat there and hustled my butt off to get through college. You going to tell me somebody that looked like all y'all white folks kept me from doing that?
Content of her virtual talk, The Psychopathic Problem of the White Mind. Before we talk about the kind of consequences there of your speech, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you said in the speech that I thought were interesting and compelling. You said, this is the cost of talking to white people. The cost of your own life as they suck you dry. There are no good apples out there. White people make my blood boil. When you say there are no good apples out there, what do you, would it be fair to say, based on your expertise, that white people are psychopathic?
I think
An earful.
If you have materials that you're providing where it says if you were born a white male, you were born an oppressor, you are abusing our children.
Lamont Hill has got to be one of the most cringe guys there is. I mean, this is a guy who said that men have periods. Come on now. There ain't nobody more full of crap than Mark Lamont Hill. Also, one more thing, too. CRT is very, very much in favor of historical revisionism. Okay, historical revisionism like what? Like the 1619 Project? Nicole Hannah-Jones even admitted that the 1619 Project was fiction. There's another thing, too. As you can see, parents are raising hell about this because they're now starting to see what their children are exposed to, and they don't like the idea of their kids being told that they are oppressors, okay? They don't like, black people don't like the idea of their kids being told that they are victims, all right? And I'll explain this a little bit more because, like I said, this is going to be a long video. But there's something else, too, and I need to go ahead and get this out of the way before we go any further with Karlyn Borysenko and the clips. When this country was created, and I need to go ahead and make this point out right, when the Declaration of Independence was being signed, not every colony was on board. So Thomas Jefferson, of course, everybody say, well, these guys were a bunch of slave owners. Yeah, they were slave owners, but they still wanted their independence from England. So in order to get the South on their side, they had to leave slavery basically alone. Eventually, after the country once we won our independence, when we were writing the Constitution, what Thomas Jefferson proposed that we do is instead of so much ending slavery in America, what we do is we basically put the Anti-Slave Act, I can't remember the actual name of it is, I'll put that in the comment section as sort of a correction. Basically, the idea was, look, slavery is going on in the United States, but this is an issue that we will revisit at a later date. So what they did was they kept slaves from coming in. Basically, it was basically ending the Slave Act, saying, look, if you're a slave and you live over here in the United States, we're not going to be bringing in or importing any more slaves. Eventually, you will get your freedom. We will work that issue out at a later date. The northern states, they wanted slavery gone. The southern states at that time did not want that. So Jefferson needed the southern states to go along with him in the actual revolution itself. That was a different topic for a different day, and there's a lot more there we can get into, much, much more juicier details. Without further ado, let's just take a look at exactly where this woman is completely wrong at. Let's go ahead and roll these. To make a very, very quick correction that I just edited into this video, the Slave Act that I'm talking about is the Slave Trade Act of 1807. Basically, the idea was we halt the importation of slaves, and eventually we kind of breed it out, and we handle it at a later date. Basically, like I was saying before, something else too, and I just realized that in this video, before we get to the Karlyn Borysenko clip, I just realized the main reason why parents don't want their kids learning critical race theory or being exposed to it is because not only is it basically telling them that they're oppressors, but it's also a theory, okay? A theory. Say it again. A theory, meaning that there's no basis or actual fact behind it. So you want us to teach our kids theories and not actual facts? Give me a damn break. And now to the clip.
So this is really important. So I want to rewind a year ago, right? When all of this Black Lives Matter stuff started happening and people were starting to pressure people to say Black Lives Matter and raise their fist and going in. What did the right do to that? The right was like, well, we think all lives matter, Karlyn, to say Black Lives Matter. That's just not going to happen. I totally get the all lives matter thing. I do. And I appreciate the sentiment of it. What they're saying is that everyone's life matters. Totally true. I tend to think the right uses it as a troll, though. I don't necessarily think that it's always used in good faith. I think they're trying to piss people off sometimes. Not all the time, but I think they are. But let's just all lives matter. And when we say all lives matter, that includes Black lives too. Now, I never really waded into this debate, honestly, because I didn't really care all that much. I am not a proponent of lives matter versus all lives matter. One can make the argument that saying Black Lives Matter is focusing in on a specific race, whereas saying all lives matter is encompassing of all races. Okay? Now, based on that explanation, do we want to focus in on a specific race, or do we want to be inclusive of everyone to say that everyone matters and everyone has worth and everyone has value? So if you would like us to just say Black Lives Matter, I want you to type BLM into the chat. If you would like us to say all lives matter, I would like you to type ALM into the chat now. Okay, which one do we want? Between those two choices, do we want Black Lives Matter or do we want all lives matter? BLM or ALM? Which is more appropriate for what you would prefer given what we know? Okay, so we have ALM, 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 ALM. Yeah, I mean, dare to dream, Liberty Lion. Dare to dream, my friend. So basically, so ALM, exactly, right? Like ALM seems like.
How is All Lives Matter trolling? How is All Lives Matter condescending? How is All Lives Matter? I don't understand that, okay? Look, the guy who lives back, I say again, he's black. The person who lives over here is black. The person who lives over here is black. I see him every day. I work with black people all the time. I'm from the South. Matter of fact, the South has got more black people than any other area in the nation. Karlyn, I think, if last I checked, somebody correct me in the comment section, I think you live in Vermont or New Hampshire. One, there's not that many black people in there. So right there, you've already kind of got somewhat of a white liberal mindset right there from the start. By the way, Malcolm X even said, stay away from the white liberal because the white liberal is bad. They basically told you this. And going right back on top of this too, see, during the riots last year, my personal feeling is that what was really going on was a black power movement, not a white power movement. You see, there's this thing called cause and effect. You see, if you cause something to happen, the consequence is normally called the effect. And we'll get on her comments that she made in a previous video about a potential white power movement going on in the nation. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys will be very interested in what I've got to say about that. So I didn't see a white power movement coming. I saw a black empowerment movement. But what was really strange was I saw a lot of black people I saw a lot of white people pushing black people to the fray. My immediate thought was, oh my God, these white people are going to push these African-American people who are upset at this point in time over George Floyd. By the way, I think a lot of the riots didn't have to do with George Floyd. I think it really had to do more with the lockdowns. People were pissed off and they just needed a spark, something to ignite it. So they used George Floyd as an excuse to go out there and go burn down Minneapolis, Boston, New York, Atlanta, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the lockdowns had more to do with that than did the actual death of George Floyd himself. As a matter of fact, there were people out there saying George Kirby. I mean, these white people didn't care about George Floyd. I mean, I felt that the black people that were out there rioting had been completely misguided, and they were being potentially pushed into police officer pistols and police officer rifles. Can you imagine what would have happened if they would have gotten killed? Seriously, I mean, could you have imagined that there? Of course, the media would have blamed the cops and said the cops were wrong, even though the cops were defending themselves. I mean, so this whole notion of people saying that all lives matter is a trolling mechanism, that right there is just flat out wrong. I mean, like I said before, they're coming after our kids in the schools. They want our kids to hate one another. Okay, so what else do you expect to say? Yes, all lives do matter. You see what they're trying to do? They're trying to separate African Americans from the rest of the population. They're actually trying to reenact Jim Crow laws just under different pretenses. Do you see what I'm saying, Karlyn? I don't think you understand that. All right, let's go ahead and roll some more.
Anti-white. I believe critical race theory is anti-white, anti-black, anti-Latino, anti-Asian, absolutely anti-biracial. They're teaching biracial kids to hate their white parent. So I believe that critical race theory is racist towards everyone. So if we have
Karlyn, all lives matter, okay? All lives matter. Inclusion is kind of the point. You see, let's go back in time really quick. Once the Civil War was over, black people had it very, very rough in this country. Eventually, black people fought, civil rights movement, legislation was passed, Jim Crow ended, and now we're on equal footing, especially here in the South. You see, I went after the Hodge twins about this the other day, and I'm probably going to go after them again because they think the South is still screwed up. People don't seem to realize is about 70% of black people in this country live below the Mason-Dixon line, below the state of Delaware. All right, so black people and white people work together. You can see critical race theory is just dividing that up, and parents don't want that stuff, including black parents, including Hispanic parents, and especially Asian parents, because Asians read this stuff and they think this says, my God, this right here hates Asians the most in particular, because let's face it, I mean, it's a stereotype, but the stereotype assumes that Asians are much smarter than people and much better at math. So right off the bat, black people feel victimized because of the CRT training, and you see you're actually making them feel more and more victimized, when in reality what you should be doing is pushing people up, not putting people down. You see, the left has this whole thing where they want to kind of put everybody up in equal foot, and they want to put everybody equal footing. But in order to get everyone on equal footing, they want to push down all the classes instead of lifting the other one up. You see what I'm saying? Everybody can do whatever they want if they put their mind to it. Critical race theory does not teach that. And when I go and say that, yes, critical race theory is anti-white, what you don't seem to understand is that any type of success in this country is viewed as white, even if you're black. You see what I'm saying? Anything that you do in this country, if you are successful, is viewed as white. Is viewed as white and is viewed as white privilege. Okay, when in reality, there's a whole bunk set of friggin' rules that the left has painted on everybody who's successful. That right there is my biggest problem with critical race theory, and it is very, very anti-white, not just anti-white people. You want further proof of this, then let me ask you a question. Why is it that every time that critical race theory comes up, it's always aimed at white people? It's aimed at whiteness. You see, success is now labeled as whiteness. Let's go ahead and roll a little bit more.
And if you have the inclination to focus specifically on the white population to the detriment of everyone else, to the detriment of every other group that this ideology impacts, then you are ethically and intellectually inconsistent, and you need to rethink that. But in the meantime, what you're not going to do, I'm sorry, you're not going to police my language. I will decide what language I use, and I will decide what language I do not use. And if you have a problem with me saying critical race theory is racist versus critical race theory is anti-white, then I'm just going to recommend that you take a long look in the mirror and you ask yourself if you ever actually cared about all of the lives that critical race theory does impact. Because I care deeply. I actually think it's more detrimental to young African-American children who are taught from the time they're kids that the entire world is working against.
Okay, Karlyn, ask yourself a question. You said biracial families, or they're telling biracial families, the kids, biracial kids, to hate their white parent. Hate their white parent. Are they asking them to hate their black parent? Are they asking them to hate their black parent because they married their white parent? You see, the white person is automatically villainized and automatically used as the villain in this scenario for critical race theorists, which, by the way, once again, I'll say this, if I hadn't already said it before, they're coming after our children. If you had children, you might would understand that. I don't know if you have kids or not, but if they had kids, you might would understand that that's what they're doing. They're targeting our children. They're trying to indoctrinate them. That's why conservatives want this crap gone. Also, something else too, and you need to learn this, especially if you're a liberal who plans on not being a part of the Democratic Party anymore. You need to understand that the first rule of conservatism is we want to be left the absolute hell alone. Small government. We don't want the government telling us what to do. Parents should be allowed to actually see what their kids are seeing, actually seeing what they're actually being taught. This is one of the reasons why teachers were raising hell last year during the pandemic, because it went on Zoom calls. Parents could finally see what their kids were being taught. A lot of parents did not approve of this crap. You see what I'm saying? So it's not just anti-white people. It's also anti-white lifestyle. And anything that's successful has been painted as white. Anything American has been painted as white. That right there is what I think you're not understanding. And as a psychologist, I think you need to understand that. You see, some people in this country, most of the people on the conservative side, are actually very, very patriotic. We don't like the idea of seeing our flag, seeing our institutions being called, the institutions that, by the way, we fought and died for, to actually be called racist, when in reality we fought to end racism. We fought to end slavery, okay? But anytime you bring that up, you're branded as white. Even if you're a black person, you're branded as white or with white privilege if you bring that up. Let me address two very, very quick points, okay? When she says, you're not going to control what I got to say, okay, Karlyn, that's kind of contradictory considering the fact, and you guys will see this in the Uber story, but it's very, very contradicting considering the fact that you're telling your own subscribers and people who comment on your posts that they're idiots. I know this because I've got people who've subscribed to my channel and told me that you call them idiots, okay? And then I went back and double checked and found out that you are, in fact, rejecting a lot of your own subscribers who subscribe to your channel. So don't sit here and talk about where you can't control my language, okay? When you block people on friggin' Twitter all the time like crazy, you block people on YouTube like crazy. Nobody's trying to control your language. You're just simply disagreeing with you, and you're getting pissed off about the fact that we disagree with you on this issue. And as you can see, I've already laid out the case that people on the left are labeling everything as white, and that there's a real reason why this whole thing is anti-white. I don't think you've actually caught this position. This is why I said you need to go back to your former brethren on the left, and you need to see exactly what the hell they're doing. I don't think you actually understand completely what they're doing. Like I said before, anything that's viewed as successful, whether you are a black person or a white person or a Hispanic person, because you are successful now or because you are patriotic, you are now labeled as white. That's why it's anti-white, because you're automatically associating anything that is good with this country with whiteness, and you're calling it bad. That's how it's anti-white. Do you see what I'm saying? Now look, let me go ahead and end this video on this one really quick note about a white power movement. There's not going to be a white power movement in this country, okay? It's just not going to be one, all right? The white power people all joined the left when they voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Richard Spencer's the one who endorsed Joe Biden, saying the left went back to their roots. So please do us a favor and spare us with this whole white power. People are going to be white power, and you're going to see this giant group of white people out there with tiki torches and crap like that. That's just not going to happen on a nationwide, because it's not going to happen in this nation, period. Guys, if you like this content, hit that like button, subscribe, share this video, hit the notification bell, sign up in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.
Now hold on. You ain't the first son of a bitch to wake up out of their dream.